So we started saying that we have a wedding, and in fact we have a priest with us. But like in all marriages, there is always someone who might oppose to the marriage. That's why we have Mr. Polillo with us. You know, something has not worked. What has not worked? Tell us. You know, people said that the relationship between Google and the cultural industries have not worked. Well, it's not true. They have done things together. Perhaps there was a starting point which was a bit rough. That is, Google started with its strength, its innovative power in a sector which used to move at a much slower pace, or perhaps because of how slow we are. I mean, by us, those who produce culture, we belong to different worlds. So Google started, they said they are not following us, we don't have an agreement, too bad, we will see. And I think that was a basic mistake, because content providers and producers base their life on the concept of copyright or intellectual property. And if this concept is not duly taken into consideration, a clash is inevitable. Then, of course, over time, we have found some agreements. In some other areas, there are still some frictions, which I'm sure will be fixed soon. What matters is that rules are complied with. What the minister said, we need to find rules. Well, there were rules at the very beginning. We were not the ones who disregarded them, but they started, they set in motion. Perhaps they were familiar with the topic in a different way. But just tell me, perhaps these rules should be changed or updated. So perhaps Google, started because the rules were no longer applicable. Well, rules on copyrights are quite simple. We don't have to revise them, all the time. An intellectual property or a copyright is that there is a person, an author, or a publisher who has some rights. The basic rule is that we sit around the table and we find an agreement. It's a very simple rule. But the minister said the credit commons, so it's a very important standard. Before the net, we could not have it. Yes, it's very important, but here again everything is based on a certain starting point. If we agree on the starting point, we can find a point of encounter easily. But if at the starting point we say, I'm not going to comply with it, of course there might be some friction. We'll have almost an anniversary. This is the first anniversary we are celebrating here. What happened 1 year ago? The minister said that 1 year ago we decided to put part of the Luce archive on the YouTube digital platform, the most evolved platform in the world of videos. Well, the Luce archive has the heritage of films, of audiovisuals in Italy. Well, as a matter of fact, all these products were already on the net. Because 10 years ago, the Luce archive was made available to everyone. There was a website which had about 7,000 visits a year. That is, scholars, people, from all over the world would go to this website. But the fact that we have used YouTube, I can tell you that after 1 year, the videos that are seen are almost 15 million. So 15 million people have watched segments of Italian culture, so, and not just from Italy, but many people from all over the world. And of course, this is part of the task that the Istituto Luce has, that is to disseminate its heritage, the heritage of Italian culture and Italian history. I think it's a beautiful example of how we can make the most of these platforms. Well, you said that one of your tasks is to disseminate culture and your heritage. Yes, of course, but also this was a way to protect our heritage, our images, because once images are uploaded, we have a way to protect these images. So we have fought the problem of piracy, and also something is paid. So we collect some money which is then used to continue with our digitalization work. Father, you use also Twitter, but Civiltà Cattolica, Catholic civilization, has an important project, and we are talking of one of the oldest magazines in the world. It's the oldest magazine in Italy. It was founded in 1850, so it has a very strong history, a history of innovation, because the magazine was founded 11 years before the unity of Italy, and it was circulated at Italian level all over Italy, and it was in Italian and not in Latin at the time. So I would say that it played a very important role. Our founding fathers of Civiltà Cattolica received 13,000 requests for subscription, and they had to buy a special machine which could print very rapidly all the issues to be sent all over Italy. So when I became the director of the magazine, I asked myself how this tradition of ours could be used. And I wanted our magazine to have a cultural impact. So we have decided to land to social networks on Facebook, on Twitter, with some success, I must say. You are like a pioneer in the Vatican. Well, as a matter of fact, the church and internet were doomed to meet in the design of God. But I'm saying this as a believer, of course. Because it's very simple. The church is based on two pillars, the relationship of communion, that is relations, and sharing a message, which is the gospel. And the internet is based on two pillars, the relationship among people and communication and the exchange of a message. So that's why it's natural for the church to be on the net. On the other side, Civiltà Cattolica has taken up the challenge. I'm sorry, but when you said in the Vatican, there is the internet, there is the net, what would they tell you? It's the other way around. The Vatican said, well, since there is the web, let's call the Father because he might help us. So you see, there is an intelligence coming from a secular wisdom. I have some problems which were raised by the net. I tackled them by reading the decrees of the Council of Trent. For instance, what the meaning of a presence in the digital world, the virtual presence without a physical presence. I fixed all these theoretical ideas using the wisdom I have in our history. If you read our old books, you understand that Sant'Agostine and Dante were used by hackers. And the comments on the book of the Genesis on creativity. Okay, that's a good way to say that some hackers are bad, but some other hackers have done good. Let's make a distinction. You know, the hacker culture has a strong roots of theological meaning. Their main question is the meaning of life. That's the culture of hackers. It's very reassuring to know that you deal with these things at the Vatican. You know, with Google, the project was very simple. I said we have 163 years of culture of a magazine that is pre-Italian. Well, this heritage cannot be guarded by us as the only proprietors. We have to put it at the disposition of the nation. So we want everyone to be able to access it free of charge. Well, I have another question on the Pope. The meaning of this Pope for social networks. We discussed a lot when Pope Ratzinger used Twitter. Perhaps that was not the right move for him, but I think that this present Pope has a strong sense of what is social. This Pope likes to talk to people directly. Yes, the Pope has a strong experience of rule because he was Archbishop in Argentina, but he has also a great experience in terms of pastoral care. He always has contact with people. Also, when he crosses St. Peter's Square, he doesn't look at the crowd, generally speaking. He looks people in the eyes and is impressed by one person or by another person. Of course, the guards are in trouble because if the Pope is staring at a child or at a person, then the car should go on, but the Pope tells the driver to stop or to drive slowly, and it's very difficult for the guards to follow the thing because the Pope really wants to have a one-to-one relationship, meaning that this Pope pays a great deal of attention to communication. So we must say that he has a very proactive approach to the internet. This is a social Pope, and his messages are very easy to tweet. We have more than 7 million messages. The minister talked about the need for change in our culture industry. And I thought about you. I think your story tell us how we can innovate and at the same time you can create economic values. Will you tell us your story? Yes. But I have this booklet, Cyber Theology. My children would say what a cool blog, and there is a sentence by Pope Francis. Be men of frontiers and don't try to tame the frontier. Leave the frontiers be and get close to them. It's a nice sentence and it sees power as a service, which is perhaps a theme we need in Italy. As regards my story, we said it's important to create value with digital platforms. Well, at a certain point, I had to organize the work of Doxa, market research, opinion polls, which was a very serious type of work, but traditional in a way, and I had to integrate it with digital media to build the future. We decided not to sell to multinational, and we continued building companies together with managers who become entrepreneurs with us. So 2.0 research is the place the most important place in Italy, perhaps in Europe, on online market research, and we continue with Doxa Digital, High Corporate, etc. And it has been quite easy because in Italy not many enterprises are open in the area of market research. There are very serious entrepreneurs in some industries, but not in others. In some industries, people have just given up being entrepreneurs. And I think if we want to put together creation of new jobs and accountability, well, we have to restructure the way we do business. Otherwise, the capitalism of the future will not create jobs. People often claim that the internet has destroyed jobs in the cultural industry. What's your perception? Well, my perception is that it has changed jobs. Globally, it will not destroy them. Perhaps there will be a reallocation by continents. It's difficult. I have many children. It's very difficult for me to explain my children what is the Authors and Publishers Association, because when they organize parties, they use social networks. So it's very difficult for them to understand that they have to pay a tax to the Italian Authors and Publishers Association. So it's good what the Treccani Encyclopedia did. We need to be courageous, we need to be open. And we have to put together the online and the offline worlds. So globally, we have more than 2,000 people. I know we are hiring a lot, dozens and dozens of young people, and the real topic is to teach the jobs of the future. I don't forget that Italian universities are not teaching to work in social media, in the digital media. We are producing people with a degree in communication sciences who will not find jobs because they don't get the right training. Well, your clients are entrepreneurs, right? They are companies, basically companies. But we have institutions, we have. Do you see that there is a new desire for digital media? I think that fear generates defeats, as it was my case, because I reinvented myself. I set up fashion companies, and you know, fashion is not the most innovative industry. So I started from scratch. I studied again to do business. So where do I get the questions from the public? I will have to read them. Well, yesterday we said that Google sometimes started abruptly. Now they have slowed down. They are softer in their approach. What do you expect? Well, Google is very innovative. Google continues to create new products, let's put it this way. So when they create new products and when they need to have a relationship with content producers, we can have a dialogue, we can sit around the table and we can take decisions. As a publisher, that's my job. If someone comes up and asks for rights, copyrights, I negotiate. I say yes, perhaps, or no, we might find an agreement. An agreement is at the basis of everything. But I'd like to make a comment on what Marina Salamon has just said. Content producers are not against digital media. This is a commonplace which I try to debunk. Music today is just digital today. There is a lot of digital in filmmaking. Also books 10% of the books sold in Italy are in the digital format. So it'd be a mistake to say that the content producing world does not follow the digital trend. But if you have digital media, you also have something behind it. The minister told us that the Encyclopedia Treccani is totally digital, but it started from an encyclopedia on paper. If we didn't continue to publish books in two formats, on paper and digital, all the costs that we have to split, of course, should be charged to just one area. And since the work of the publisher is not to take something that comes and just put it on the net, but we have to process contents, and this is not just book publishers, but also for film producers, for the world of the culture industry, or the liquid cultural industry, as it were, not a monument or a museum. So you see, there is a lot of processing, and the work of the publisher is fundamental. Don't believe when people say that self-publishing is the future, because self-publishing means that anyone who doesn't know how to write without making mistakes can post something on the net, or can publish something on the net. That's not culture, that's just a shopping list. This is not where the world is heading. There is a big difference between Treccani and Wikipedia. Treccani always tells you the truth. This is not true for Wikipedia. On Wikipedia, I have the profile of my publishing house, which is totally wrong. My publishing house has been operational for 20 years. I want to see when someone is going to change it. So it's not just because you find it on the web that you know it's right. The accuracy of a piece of information comes from your knowledge. Let's make a crowdsourcing experiment. Tell us the name of the publishing house, and let's see if someone is going to correct the information on Polillo Editore. Let's prove him that Wikipedia can be corrected. I'm sure that by the end of the morning the information will be corrected. Well, this is a way to prove that knowledge brings the best result. So you say the information is wrong, correct it, and then someone who knows the topic will correct it. You know how many inaccuracies we have in our daily papers and we never correct them? I know this very well. Well, I'd like to go back to you because we were saying something interesting on the agreement between Google and YouTube, but we received some criticism from the net. They said, why do you use Google and not a more open container? What was the advantage of doing that? Well, YouTube is the most open container. As I said, our contents have been on the net for a decade. YouTube is a platform, a digital platform, and the title of the conference is in fact Digital Platforms and Opportunities. The fact that we landed on YouTube was a win-win situation, big opportunities for us as well. In fact, the number of visits has increased dramatically. Of course, now we are negotiating with our European platforms. There will be others coming, but as I said at the beginning, our mission is disseminating our content, so we're just open, we have no constraints. So can you say mission accomplished, and then what? And what next?
So it's not just about protecting content. Well, clearly we created the Luce channel in YouTube. We are adding up more and more contents. Very soon, in collaboration with YouTube, we are going to launch a program on contemporary Italian movies, sponsored at zero cost for us because everything is being sponsored. It's going to be called Light News. These contents can be used weekly by users. There is a question from Mr. Scorza, lawyer. What is SIAE? How would you explain to your children what is SIAE? SIAE is a collecting company. They collect copyright fees. Can SIAE innovate itself? Well, the minister just left. Ours I mean, SIAE is a government agency, a government entity, and it's mostly about music. This has to do with the Italian guilds, which come from the Middle Ages. Time has come to reorganize them, I think. Civilità Cattolica is a small piece of the cultural heritage of the Vatican City. We have a very interesting project. Civiltà Cattolica is part of the cultural project of the Church. I'm a Jesuit. Civiltà Cattolica is written by the Company of Jesus by Jesuits. So we are trying to put together an international network. Well, not building, but enhancing a network. The network doesn't exist as such. The internet is not just about cables and wires. The internet is life itself. Life is a set of complex interconnections. Indeed, the internet is an expression of life, and the Company of Jesus, Jesuits producing contents and values and beliefs all over the world are playing a key role in this. We want to connect different experiences together, giving a common face to such experiences. For example, we are now collaborating with the Italian Jesuit community and with the global community of Jesuits. And in my room, I have a list of all Jesuits all over the world. Whenever I need something about, say, Venezuela or Brazil or the States, and I think that magazines should be seen as a contact creation point. That's why we need to enhance contents located elsewhere to get more intelligence from our side, and so we can publish those contents. It's a way of sharing experiences, values, and different meanings. This is what we see with respect to the input given by networks. The minister discussed about a catalog of cultural heritage. You could do the same with the Vatican. Well, we are already doing this. The Vatican is at the forefront in this respect. The Pontifical Council for Communication and Culture is doing a huge work. The last plenary session of the Pontifical Council for Culture, chaired by Cardinal Ravasi, was all focused on the digital world and the digital natives. We had a very open debate on this, so the Church and the network are in sync, I believe. It's not just about, the application of an existing technique. One final question to Marina, going back to the wedding. One started too early, one too late, an advice to bride and groom. Well, I'm not saying this as a believer. Father Spadaro has just told us that history just happens. Do you remember the Middle Ages when they lifted bridges to protect against the enemy? Forgive me, but co-creation or the spontaneous creation isn't mean and the rest is good. History happens. One of my children the other day was writing on Facebook a message, and he wrote, there has been an earthquake, but we didn't realize. We found out from Facebook. We learned about the earthquake from Facebook. That's what they mean. History just happens. Here, Italy, the old way of producing contents, should innovate itself. We are just too focused on the beauty of a product, on fashion, and not on the marketing of the product itself.
Ma sì, ma lo sta facendo e c'è da dire un'altra cosa secondo me
In my
importante che ha detto il
opinion,
ministro prima, adesso non c'è più, ma
this
glielo ho
was
detto in altre
emphasized
occasioni, quando lui
by the
diceva
minister.
facciamo
He said we
sistema
should create a
sul mondo
system,
pubblico, sul mondo della scuola, eccetera, eccetera. Io gli ho
education,
detto in
public
passato, voglio ripetere
agencies,
adesso,
and the like.
facciamo sistema
Well,
ma coinvolgiamo anche
yes, we
noi.
should create a
Cioè lui non
system
mi
by
può dire
involving
che i programmi
ourselves.
scolastici sono
School
fatti in una maniera,
curricula,
i libri di testo sono sbagliati quando i programmi li
textbooks
fanno
are
loro.
wrong, he
Se loro fanno i
says, but
programmi, noi
they
facciamo il testo
prepare
su
the
quei programmi.
curricula and
Loro
we
non possono
just
dire che è
adjust
una cosa
ourselves
brutta quando l'origine è quella lì.
to those
E non
curricula.
possono dirmi che noi non
I
facciamo il
don't
digitale
accept,
quando
we
gli
don't
insegnanti
create a digital contents.
spesso e volentieri per una
Teachers
questione di età,
themselves,
per una questione di
due
conoscenza,
to
per una
their
questione di abitudine,
age,
preferiscono il
knowledge,
cartaceo.
attitudes,
Allora,
just
il
seem to
mondo ha ragione
prefer
Marina quando dice cambia e
paper
va
books.
adeguato, ma
So
tutto
Marina
il
is
mondo va
right
adeguato.
when she says
Cioè
that
non
the
è il
world is
passaggio
changing, but
automatico dal
everybody
cartaceo al
should
digitale,
adapt
perché io
themselves
che
to the new
ho una
world.
mamma di
My
91
mother
anni
is
alla quale faccio i
91.
fondi redditi, il CUD glielo mandano in digitale e come fa
They
poverina?
send, you
Perché c'ha
know,
il figlio che
her
va a scaricarglielo, ma se non avesse il
tax
figlio
return
sarebbe un evasore
by
fiscale, cioè ci
email.
vuole una
But
gradualità e
can
questa è
you
una cosa sulla
imagine
quale tutti quanti
someone
ci
aged
dimentichiamo che c'è una
91
fascia di persone in
downloading
Italia che per
a
motivi
form,
anagrafici,
a
per motivi di
file
conoscenza,
from the
tutto quello che
internet?
vogliamo,
This
non
is
è
very
ancora pronta,
unlikely.
quindi
She
ci vuole un
needs my
passaggio
help.
graduale,
She's not
non è il
ready yet.
salto in avanti.
That's
Il
why I
salto in
think
avanti nasce un sacco
this
di
should
riflessioni,
be
secondo me.
a gradual, stepwise process. My mother is 72, younger, but she has a Facebook account.
Complimenti a lei.
She's on Facebook. Well, I accept 72 is not 91, but I mean,
Però avrà delle amiche,
people
sua madre, che non
of a
fanno queste
certain
cose, che non è
age
che per quel motivo devono essere abbandonate.
like, you know, the new technologies.
Posso dirti una cosa? Cioè, io penso, sono tutte cose molto, molto interessanti che stiamo dicendo. Secondo me qui però la cosa
This is all very interesting, but I believe that the key point is understanding that this is about epistemology. What do we mean by cultural heritage? The network has a direct impact on our understanding of cultural heritage. The Minister for Cultural Heritage now is not the same, doesn't do the same things that the minister did in the past. Why? Because the meaning of cultural heritage changes over time. We perceive something as a cultural heritage differently. Journalists, communicators used to write articles according to pre-established rules. This is no longer the case. Articles these days are commented right away by readers. And the comment is part of that article, of that object. This implies a cultural rethinking of what we mean by heritage and cultural heritage. This is all very nice. It's important to highlight issues and problems too. We will discuss about these aspects later today during the panel session. The first session ends here. Thank you all. Thank you, Marina. See you later.